Bernie Sanders says US should confiscate 100% of any money Americans make above $999 million, they can survive just fine. What do you think? So maybe someone can try to explain this a bit. Would this apply to the value of the company stock? Because to my knowledge most of the people in this category don't actually take home 1 billion plus in cash into their checking. I think the average Redditor has absolutely no idea that there is a difference between income and wealth, and that forcing someone to liquidate their wealth is completely impractical and moronic. I don't imagine the policy would ever have a chance to be exercised for many years. Billionaires don't have yearly salaries of $1 billion that the government can just take via income tax. They own assets that hold over $1 billion of value altogether. That's not exactly what he said. He said billionaires shouldn't exist. When pressed, he said it wasn't that the person shouldn't exist, but a system that allows people to accumulate that much wealth, where a small handful of people have more wealth than 70% of the nation, shouldn't exist. He wants to tax them at the rate they were taxed when Eisenhower was president, because if they were taxed like that, the excess wealth then goes back into their companies, their employees, charity, etc. Wallace kept pressing with the same "so you want to confiscate everything over $1 billion, and then Bernie finally said they'd be fine with $999,999. People always say that he wants to take money from the rich, but he just wants a system that doesn't allow the rich to take money from everyone else. So, if legislation isn't going to be created to fix everything, let's face it, it never will be. The easiest route is to just raise their taxes. This threat just shows how bad our public education system is. The last thing this country needs is a communist reckoning. Get real, nerds. Stop blaming your shitty lives on other people. Drop it to 100M. And make it more broad than income. Plenty of billionaires take no technical salary and just let their net worth increase by way of their shares, bonds, index funds, and other portfolios. Call that 100M an absolute maximum net worth. I'm starting to think people on the left just genuinely have no idea what this type of wealth actually is. Like, when these people hear that Bezos is worth $126 billion, do they think he just has all that money stashed away in cash somewhere, a big room of money that he jumps into Scrooge McDuck style or something? That's not how anything works. That net worth number is made up mostly of all the assets that belonging to his company. The delivery trucks, the sorting warehouses, etc. This is not money being hoarded, it's all tied up in the machinery that keeps services we all use running. The 126 bil is not really a measure of personal wealth as much as it's a metric of value he has created through his management, value that continues to be used by everyone. Many of these guys actually have very little uninvested personal wealth. Musk didn't even own a home for a long time. It's just numbers on paper. There is not really any way to confiscate it short of seizing and liquidating the assets that keep these companies going, which would be super short-sighted. Billionaires will just find loopholes to not be a billionaire. I think who the fuck is the government to step in and put a cap on how much money people can acquire? Aside from that fact that I don't trust the government to do the right things with it other than pay for the war machine and funnel it into their pockets. I think this is a shitty bait post and the mods really need to step in and do something about the quality of posts on this sub. The fact that you used the word confiscate tells us all we need to know about what you think. When they tax poor people, they call it a fee. When they tax people who got rich off those fees, is called confiscation. They twist the words taxed at 100% from a quote that he didn't actually say. Simply put, this is false information. Are you essentially arguing that the government should seize the remaining funds until you reach $999 million? Matthews turned to the independent U.S. Senator from Vermont who also caucuses with Democrats and helped them win a narrow majority in the upper house of Congress. Yes, Sanders affirmed. You may disagree with me, but that's okay. I believe people can survive on $999 million. They can survive perfectly fine, in my opinion. He hasn't even called for or proposed a tax. He's merely responding with a shrug to the interviewer's ridiculous assertion. Almost no one on the planet reports having $1 billion annual income. This is all contained in multiple assets. Bernie merely shrugged off a crude and perhaps laden remark, and now everyone is working up a fuss about how Bernie wants a 100% tax. He hasn't actually said that. His policy perspective, or the viewpoint he expresses in that interview, is a return to tax rates as they were under Eisenhower. Which is entirely logical. Punishing success is a terrible idea. Spending less on stupid stuff is a better answer. Bernie did not say that, the Daily Wire interviewer said that. Bernie shrugged. Why is a Chris Wallace quote being attributed to Bernie Sanders? The entire tax system needs to be revamped. The middle class pays more of a burden than the billionaires do. It's ridiculous. Of course, that is just a political slogan by Bernie, and it is not the practical implementation of the idea. But they do need to apply taxes to the giant global megacorporations in an effective way. We know from the Panama Papers how extremely common it is for any wealthy people to hide their money from income taxes, and you don't have to be super rich to do this. So the solution needs to be on how the very wealthy interact with society in the USA, with taxes on land, with a generous lower limit exemption, and on consumption, taxes on your second yacht should be pretty high. And hey, as a fun idea, how about if the super wealthy contributes a huge amount to politics, or super PAC, then they have to match it with a tax payment. If they take a Scottish justice on lavish $1 million vacations, they match that with a tax payment. Etc. Confiscate is certainly a choice of words. I'll never understand why someone's 1 in 100 million chance of becoming a billionaire is more important to them than a guarantee of a basic social structure that helps everyone get a more fair shot. Edit. A lot of people have offered the counterpoint that this argument is incomplete at best and misleading at worst, and I concede, to a point. The majority of people against taxing the ultra-wealthy that I know, have spoken about their mistrust of the government. That mistrust, and what about the government they don't trust, is a separate and much deeper conversation to me. See, this is why I left Facebook for Reddit. I would have just been hit with parrot talking points or cheap insults. Here, I'm given plenty to think about. Fuck man. He didn't say that. He gave an interview and responded vaguely to a question about billionaires. I'm so tired of having to tell people to read the actual interview. Come on y'all, we know better than this by now. This is misinformation.